Today's session is going to look at special populations. So with special populations, specifically for your qualification, it's going to be looking at 14 to 16-year-olds, elderly clients, or 65 or above is the general consensus for that area, pre and postnatal, as well as disabled clients. Now, this information is going to help you within your worksheets, specifically Unit 6, but also considering any plans and adaptations going forward, and then obviously into the real life scenarios, potentially working with clients in the future once you're fully qualified. So in terms of what we need to look at, the idea is simply just to be able to consider what your client's specific needs are and cater for them within your planning. As I say, within the adaptions and alternatives worksheet, this is going to be the main thing we focus on. So in terms of Unit 6, the first section will be 14 to 16-year-olds. Now you're going to have to cover this within cardio, resistance training, free weight training, and body weight training for all the groups, but we'll just look at each one in terms of the key characteristics, and then you can go away and put that into your planning itself. So the first one we're going to look at is 14 to 16-year-olds. Now, things to probably consider the most when we're looking at 14 to 16-year-olds is the knowledge may need to be developed further. So there's going to be a lack of knowledge. So how could you make the exercise easier? How could you develop that knowledge further? How could you potentially break down that exercise, or certainly lower the risk by changing the exercise? The other thing to consider is the fact they're going to have they're still growing. So we want to reduce the impact on the joints where possible. We can do this in a lot of ways, but probably the easiest way is just to remove certain exercises that are going to cause that extra stress that maybe is avoidable or can be avoided when working with those clients. And then the final thing really to consider, mainly for the CV aspect, is going to be the fact of the inability to regulate temperature in the same way that an adult can. So if you've got any young nieces or nephews and things like that, you might find that if you're ever doing anything with them, they seem to get worn out, hot and sweaty a lot quicker. With this in mind, this is an area where you probably will want to maybe split something like a 15-minute cardio session down to 5 groups, and then just give them that little bit of additional rest in between the sessions. That way you can help regulate the temperature for them rather than them having to do it themselves. So that's 14, 16-year-olds, and that can be kind of applied across the board. In terms of older adults, probably the 3 biggest things to consider are potential risk of higher blood pressure. Quite common, obviously, within adults in general, but certainly older adults. The lowering of general capability, so in terms of flexibility, strength, and just general kind of ability to perform exercises in the same way that your general population can. So with that, that's something to obviously consider. And then additionally, with the older adults, it's just going to be a case of there's going to be a higher chance of injuries, wear and tear on joints, things like that. So the things we can look at is we can reduce the range of motion. So with something like a squat, we could potentially put it as a box squat or make it safer by putting it as a box squat. We could also look at different machines to use. So we could potentially put that onto a leg press to work the same muscle groups, but also by working the same area. In terms of high blood pressure, the simplest and easy way to avoid that is doing anything that's either isometric. So we don't want to be doing anything where we're holding a particular position, like a plank. So a plank will put your body under extreme change, in the sense of that the blood pressure can actually acutely increase over a small period of time. This is due to the muscles having to constantly contract rather than contracting and relaxing like they do with maybe like a bicep curl. If I was to sit here and squeeze my biceps as hard as I can, I'm constantly forcing blood flow. So someone with high blood pressure, you want to avoid that. The other thing to avoid with high blood pressure would be pressing overhead. Again, you're working against gravity. When me pressing overhead, I've got to pump blood upwards, so it's harder on the heart. So if you can avoid those things for older adults, fantastic. Easiest way to do that is potentially something like a shoulder press. Turn it into a lateral raise. You're still working the same area without going overhead. So it's simple, just kind of considering those needs. And as I say, just try to make things safer. Avoid high impact, avoid extra stress on joints. Maybe lighten the weight. Simple methods like that. Obviously, this is always going to be individual. You might get older clients that are fit than your younger client, but it's obviously a general population consensus with the way these worksheets work. And then Pre and postnatal, probably the biggest things to consider for pre and postnatal is going to be the fact of, is it comfortable for the female client during pregnancy to perform that exercise still? So if it's something like a leg press where your legs are coming right up into kind of your like abdomen area, that's not going to be comfortable, especially further down in the pregnancy. So what you're going to want to do there is look at the idea of how can I change that? Could I maybe stick them on a leg extension, work the same muscles without that issue? Could I maybe look to maybe do a wall squat where we're still squatting, certainly in the earlier stages of pregnancy, where we're still squatting but without necessarily having the knees coming up as far into the joint or the compression you get onto the stomach. You're certainly going to want to avoid any prone exercises, so you don't want to be lying down on the stomach, especially after that first trimester. And then additionally to that, it's just really a case of considering the fact that they are carrying a second person, they may need additional rest, and blood pressure actually will probably have been increased just due to the pregnancy itself, so something to consider in its own necessity. And then finally, in terms of postnatal, one of the biggest things to consider is in terms of when someone comes back. That obviously going to have gone through a lot in terms of core strength. So the core's not going to be as strong as it used to be. So something to certainly consider there would be, can you make an exercise safer, easier, more comfortable? Could we maybe start at a leg press and build it up to a wall squat, then onto a back squat if that's something they want to do, and that was in the plan originally. As they do so, you can build up that core strength and slowly progress that along with it until they're ready to go into back squats. And the other thing to consider is the hormone, which is known as relaxin. Now this basically enables joints to become more flexible, more open, which is great for labour, for childbirth. Not so great for suddenly coming back into the gym after 6 weeks off and straight away you want to do a Zumba class. What relaxing does, it literally will enable the joints to go that bit further. So it's quite often when you used to work in a leisure centre that you get someone come back and like straight away in a class they'd end up doing a knee or rolling an ankle or something like that. So the easiest way to avoid that is, again, just considering. So if you've got lunges as one of their leg movements, there's a lot of balance and coordination involved in lunges. So let's maybe look at removing that, and again, maybe put it on a leg press, maybe do some, even if it was stationary lunges, rather than where you're changing and kind of having to do that quick, fast coordination aspect to lessen the chance of injury. Now, when it comes to the disabled clients, it's entirely up to you what disabilities you use, although I do ask that you have different disabilities in the worksheet. I want to see at least 4, so that basically means one different one used throughout your cardio, weights, resistance machines and free weight, body weight exercises. And with that in mind, the 4 I generally just recommend for all people to use, just so you've got a simple basic platform to work from. Just use a blind client, a deaf client, go for a client with some form of learning difficulty. You can just put learning difficulty, although you can then specify it, and you could go autism, you could go Down syndrome, something like that, and then also just use an amputee as a client itself, and then you've got your 4 clients you can work with. And now additionally for that, it's just really a case of considering their needs and how to make it safer. So again, if I go for the simplest thing I can think of in this sense and just go running machine, and it's a blind client, is that going to be safe? Probably not in terms of running, but could I get them to walk on a running machine? Yes. Could I get them to do a high incline? Yes. Are you going to have to use a safety belt? Well, definitely, I'd recommend that straight away. Are you going to have to maybe help them on and off the machine? Yep, certainly. And are you going to have to basically give them that little bit of extra assistance, and because they are obviously blind, guide them on and off the machine itself and maybe set it up for them? Yeah, absolutely. But once they're on it, and once they're comfortable, clipped in and maybe holding the handles and doing all that, absolutely fine. And it works in the same way with the blind client, deaf client, etc, etc. It's just considering their needs, how you can still enable them to do everything they want to do in the safest manner possible. Okay, so put this into the unit, into your worksheet, and obviously hopefully this will develop your knowledge in that area as well as in your manuals itself.